It's the big story at this hour. The ATM party will formally ask the Speaker of the National Assembly to postpone its no-confidence motion against President Cyril Ramaphosa, which was scheduled for this afternoon. That's pending a decision on the party's court application to review the National Assembly Speaker Thandi Modise's rejection of a secret ballot. The ATM initially brought the motion saying the president must account for high unemployment, for the high unemployment rate and a stagnating economy. But some opposition parties, including the DA and the UDM, say they would not participate, had said they would not participate today. Let's speak to political analyst and host of The Fix here on ENCA, that's Karima Brown, as well as we are joined on the other line by Cathy Powell to just talk about the legal aspects of it all. So, Karima, let me start with you. All warm up and no play. I mean, it feels a bit like 2017, once again, motions of no confidence, issues around the issue of a secret ballot or to hold it in the open. Are you surprised, firstly, that this is being pushed back by the ATM?
No, I'm not surprised, Tulas. I think the Democratic Alliance's instinct for why they're not participating in this debate is right. It says that it's a frivolous motion because this is a factionalized battle in the African National Congress. Now, even though the ATM is an independent party, it stems out of the factional machinations in the ANC. And as I was saying to you before we were live, Tulas, where I listened to your editorial on the question of the appropriateness of, a vote of no confidence and whether it serves the democratic project. And I think it does, except that in this instance, to us, this is not about the entire political, culture and body politic. This is the toxicity in the African National Congress that is playing itself out in the National Assembly. And I think that what we need to do is to say to the African National Congress and its surrogates that the battle is in the party there, and they need to fight it out like they do at elective conferences, NECs, and National General Councils, which I imagine is going to be held next year. They shouldn't bring that toxicity and factional fights to the national parliament. We have really urgent business to discuss that needs to get done in the National Assembly, particularly in this time. And our economy, to us, is in dire straits. And I think that this motion here is another factionalized attempt by permutations in the African National Congress that have now resulted in a new party being formed, being fought out in the legislature. And it's unfortunate.
I can tell you now you'll have a lot of people, unhappy people such as Mzwane Lemanyi and Vuyo Zungula there, in as far as your framing of how this relates to the internal factions inside the ANC. Karima, let's pause for a moment. Let me bring in Professor Cathy Powell into this particular conversation. Cathy, the whole situation around postponing pending the final decision on this question of a secret ballot, that's right in terms of law, is it not? Because otherwise to proceed would lead to a situation where the remedy comes way after the damage is done, if there's any damage to be done in holding this by open ballot, if the Speaker were to persist with that.
Certainly, there's no point in going ahead if the ATM has requested a secret ballot, it's been refused, and the ATM is of the firm opinion somehow that refusal is reviewable. Whether it's reviewable, whether the court would interfere with the Speaker's discretion there is more questionable. But certainly the actual vote has to wait until that issue is decided.
The UDM, Cathy, if I stick with you, says the exercise of the discretion by the Speaker has been arbitrary, in that previously the previous Speaker basically convened all the political parties and gave the context, and drawing from that UDM judgment, painted the context and then decided that actually given this context, for members to be able to exercise their duties, to hold the President to account without fear of retribution, it is proper that we should have it via a secret ballot. Are you convinced by those arguments?
Yes, I think that the last time the Speaker decided to hold a secret ballot, she provided very good reasons for doing so, which is the heightened and polarized climate in the country at the time, not just within the ANC, but between all the parties, and the genuine fear that some MPs had that there would be retribution if they voted against the party. That UDM case pointed out that the primary allegiance of every MP is to the people of South Africa and not to their party. And it said that the Speaker had the discretion to decide to hold a secret ballot if Parliament's actual duty of being an effective an effective overseer of executive oversight would otherwise be compromised. Now, I think in this case, there's less of an indication that Parliament's ability to exercise its duty to be effective would be compromised. Although, who knows, if Karima's picture of the fights within the ANC is true, then maybe there are a whole lot of factions within the ANC that would like to be able to vote against Cyril Ramaphosa in peace. On the other hand, one of the other things that the UDM judgment also acknowledged is that MPs have to show some courage, and one has to bear in mind the possibility that MPs voting secretly are also open to persuasion through forms like bribery and other non-oversight related considerations.
Yeah, and those are all factors that were brought up in that UDM judgment. Don't go anywhere, please, Cathy. I'll come back to you in just a moment. Karima, in terms of the toxicity of the environment in the Speaker's exercise of this discretion, I don't know about you, but I'm not convinced that there's that level of toxicity, certainly in the inter-party relations. So should intra-party relations be so, elevated to the level of being almost that decisive? And also within the ANC itself, have they reached that level of toxicity that basically you need a secret ballot?
No, I don't think so. In fact, what is markedly different, even though the ANC is as divided as it was under President Jacob Zuma, is that the ANC is a much more freer organization. People are allowed to speak their minds in the organization. And the ANC, for example, is having an all-important NEC on Sunday, where the top echelons of the party is going to come together. And it's the first one since Ismagashule has been charged,
That's
for example.
Battle Royale, right?
Precisely, and I think those are the forums where the inter-party, dynamics need to be, or intra-party, as in the ANC itself, the faction needs to deal with the issues. As you know, most parties who run in Parliament runs a three-line whippery, and that is probably what will be expected. I think Professor Powell raises an important issue around the fact that there are a whole range of reasons that has nothing to do with transparency that could also impact the way in which people, vote if the vote is secret. And I think that is why the Speaker's arguments are actually solid. If a motion is to go ahead, it needs to be done so in the open so that we can actually see what parliamentarians are doing. We must remember that the crisis existed with President Zuma because we had the state capture phenomena. We saw at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry the level and the extent to which state institutions were in fact captured, and what was put on the table for people to become political pawns of people that had nothing to do with the executive, if the testimonies of people like KBC Jonas and others are anything to go by. That situation does not obtain in the African National Congress at the moment. And therefore, I think if there is to be a motion, there should be a motion where we can see what it is that MPs does. Throwing
forward to that meeting that you've been sort of alluding to, of the National Executive Committee of the ANC on the weekend, would it have mattered for President Cyril Ramaphosa to have gone into that meeting on the weekend off the back of easily defeating a motion of no confidence in him, with the backing of ANC members of parliament, and perhaps with, quite few, if any, voting with the opposition?
Absolutely, and I think that is why my proposition that the ATM is a faction of the African National Congress is not false, because it could easily have proceeded if the issue of the motion of no confidence was really the key issue, and they've put some compelling reasons for why we need to look at this administration, particularly because so much of the decisions have been taken outside of Parliament and in that national council that operates under the disaster management regulations, away from parliamentary and public scrutiny. But they trying to sell to ANC MPs who are trying to decide which faction they want to be in the ANC, to dangle them a carrot. And I think their proposal that it be postponed until they resolve this matter is an indication that it has less to do with a genuine attempt to call into account President Ramaphosa's governance and his administration's handling of the crisis of COVID-19, and it plays into the factional battles that is playing itself out behind a thick curtain that sometimes the ANC doesn't like to draw, and I think that battle is going to continue in the NEC come Sunday.
Karima, while you ponder on the bigger existential question of our politics that I asked you off air, let me bring in Professor Cathy Powell one more time, just to ask you, Prof, about just explain to us, Prof. I mean, I see Karima's arguments around why this time around it should be an open ballot as opposed to previously when it was a secret ballot. And just to explain, it's not being suggested that a secret ballot following that UDM judgment is now automatic, is it? And why should it not be automatic?
It's not automatic, and in the UDM judgment, what the Constitutional Court did was to say that the Speaker's decision that she did not have the power to order a secret ballot was incorrect. And it then referred back to her that decision. The court said to the Speaker, yes, you do have the power to make a decision whether the ballot is secret or open, and we as the courts do not have the power to make that decision because of the doctrine of separation of powers. It's Parliament that must run itself, and therefore the Speaker has to decide and exercise her discretion whether or not to have an open or a secret ballot. Now, the court did list a couple of factors that the Speaker could consider, but they boil down to what is going to make Parliament act more effectively, which I consider a fairly wide latitude. Obviously, that seems to emphasize the issue of oversight. But the rest of the judgment did consider the number of complex reasons why both an open and a secret ballot have their advantages. I think the most important point at the moment is that the courts are going to be very reluctant to interfere with the Speaker exercising her discretion as long as she gives some plausible reasons for why she's made a choice, because the courts do not want to interfere in how Parliament runs itself.
I suspect you probably didn't catch my opening comments, Professor Powell, at the beginning of the show about the importance of the motions of no confidence as an accountability-enhancing measure, in which comments I relied a lot on that UDM judgment as well as the 2013 Mazibuko judgment. But working off the premise that you didn't see my comments, what's your sense? Should President Cyril Ramaphosa be shielded from facing a motion of no confidence as a matter of principle?
Oh, no, not at all. Look, votes of no confidence are a very important accountability mechanism. Both Mazibuko and the UDM case made that point. The problem is that every good thing can be abused for other ends. So while a motion of no confidence is so important that Parliament may not delay its bringing. So that was the Mazibuko incident where Lindiwe Mazibuko wanted to bring a motion of no confidence, and the various committees in Parliament who were ANC dominated basically put obstacles to the bringing of that motion. The court said, no, you can't do that. So yes, the bringing of a motion of no confidence should be allowed, and it's important. In this circumstance, I agree with the political analysis that we've heard, that it's actually part of some game that's being played, and it's not really about political accountability. And maybe now it's more important that we think of the political accountability of the MPs to the public. And in that case, it would be one of the reasons to have an open ballot where the electorate knows what the MPs are voting for, and the MPs have to justify what they do.
Professor Cathy Powell, thank you for your time. And Karima, you know what sucks? The fact that we are a live show and live events are happening on the go. I won't get to my existential political question with you, and that's because President Cyril Ramaphosa has actually started delivering his address.